And we are back. We are welcome back to another edition of the Fantasy Authority podcast. We are heading into week 12. I am joined once again by my co-hosts. You can find them on Twitter as well at Nate Henry FF and at hashtag HedgeLife, Cody Kutzer at C Kutzer FF. How are you boys doing tonight?
Doing all right, man. I'm ready to get past week 11. It was by far the worst fantasy week I've had in quite some time. I think I ended up going like 3-11 in my season-long leagues. To put it this way, so I had a super flex league where I started 0 quarterbacks, got bounced out of the money in FanDuel by 0.2 points, and then last night I had a prop on Melvin Gordon rushing yards over under 69.5. I took the over and he ended up with 69. So that was my week in a nutshell. So looking forward to getting started on week 12 and putting that garbage behind me. How are you boys?
Hanging in there. I had a frustrating week as well. You always hate when you score the second most points and have to play the guy who scores the first most, but such is life. Anyway,
ready? Dude, you're going on a cruise, man. Where are you going?
Mostly the Caribbean. Yeah, we're gonna hit Aruba and Curacao and St. Kitts. Start out in San Juan. So yeah, it's my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. So it's gonna be the whole family.
Oh, nice, man.
Yeah.
Nate, you are always beaming with excitement whenever you talk. It's like, so I can just back off with all the excitement over there.
Hey, it's Tuesday and it's not Saturday yet, so I will be a whole new man with a margarita in my hand and sunshine. But for now, I'm stuck in Chicago and sticking to water tonight. So, you know. That's when the real sunniness comes out. I have to tame it down for the podcast. Most people bring it up. I have to actually tone down my personality. I'm too much.
Is the margarita your go-to drink, or is that just your go-to like vacation drink?
I think that's definitely a vacation thing, and it's a when in Rome situation, I think.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I too. Well, I guess it was kind of a split, right? So my season long, like I'm on the verge of not making the playoffs, which is really tilting, because I have the best team in the league. Like, the one team I've talked about with Saquon and Aaron Jones and Nick Chubb and Chris Godwin and Austin Hooper. Like I pretty much, and I am 6-5, and I'm tied with a guy, and he beat me early in the year, and that's our tiebreaker. We only playing once, so I have to hope I win out these next 2 weeks, or else I'm not in the playoffs, which would be the most tilting thing in the world. And everybody in the league is like praying that I lose these next 2 weeks because I have, like I said, I have an amazing team. But that is fantasy football for you. It is a bitch. I have scored the most points in the league, and I'm 6-5. Lost this past week by 3 points. I had. Brian, if it wasn't for Brian Hill, like it's all like when you start to think about it, you're like, wow, if Brian Hill never happened, I would have won this week. So, because going into Monday night, I was down by 3 points. I had Keenan Allen, did good, 21 points last night. He had Austin Eckler, who also scored 21 points. So, ended up still losing by the 3 points. So, neither here. My DFS week was really good. I 4x'd on the week, so that was really good. Had a ton of John Brown, Josh Allen stacks, so
nice.
That worked out. So, but anyways, this is a forward-thinking podcast, so let's move on to week 12 because that is what everybody's here for. No one wants to hear us wallow in our pity over here. So, anyways, week 12 looks like another fun week. We got some strong teams on bye this week, though. We do have the Chiefs are on bye, the Chargers are on bye. Who else? You know off the top of your head? Anyway.
Chiefs, Cardinals, Chargers, and Vikings.
That's right, Vikings. I knew the Vikings, yeah, because I have Stephon Diggs. So, anyways, so we have some pretty solid teams on bye this week. This might be one of the biggest bye weeks of the year in terms of just players that people probably have on their fantasy rosters. Like last week, it had 6 teams on bye, I believe, but there was a lot of like bad teams, so it didn't really affect too many people. This week, I feel like this is really where people are going to find out and get some key wins this week. So this will be a good one because tonight we are going to do what just like we did last week, and we are going to basically break down the Week 12 slate and kind of what people should do and the way to navigate the waters. Well, let's start first. We actually have a question already, so if you do have questions, you can just drop them in the chat, and we will get to them as they come. I have Ridley and Jones. Would you start Ridley over Kupp in flex PPR? Which is tough, right? Because like 3-4 weeks ago, you'd be like, fuck no. Like you're starting, Cooper Kupp. But the last 3 weeks, like he's been wide receiver 40, wide receiver 58. Like it has not been good for Cooper Kupp, but it's not really Cooper Kupp's fault. It's Jared Goff as a terrible quarterback.
Yeah, and then they have the a not so fantasy friendly matchup with Baltimore this week as well. So, and then Ridley just had that smash spot last week, and he has another good matchup this week. So that question is definitely understandable. I think I might just roll Ridley there, to be honest. I mean, they're going up against the Bucs. Like I said, Rams have the Ravens. I'm going to take the ceiling play there, and I'll go Ridley over Kupp.
So my question though would be because it sounds like he has Julio as well. So you're banking on not that 2 Atlanta wide receivers can't go off against Tampa Bay and their poorest pass defense. So there is some upside there, and especially if Austin Hooper's out again, we're really narrow target share here. You're not, again, strong pass funnel. I mean, we'll probably talk about this all night tonight, but this is one of the best matchups on the slate with Tampa Bay, effectively pretty much slowing down everybody. Alvin Kamara was decent last week, more as a pass catcher, but I mean, he was able to get something done. But for the most part, no team has been able to run against, and let's be honest, Atlanta Falcons have not been able to run the football against anybody all year. Doesn't matter whether it's Devonta Freeman or Brian Hill or anybody else. So to think that all of a sudden Brian Hill's going to go out and smash against this team, or they're going to be able to run the ball, I think is I wouldn't count on it. So, they're going to have to move the ball through the air. So I don't think it's crazy to start both Ridley and Julio, but it is risky.
Yeah, it's suboptimal, right, to start both Ridley and Julio. I think I'd go Kupp. It's at home. We know Jared Goff plays better at home. We also expect to see Brandon Cooks back. So whether or not Robert Woods returns from this mysterious personal issue, at least you'll have another playmaker on the field. I think that Cooks is an integral part to Kupp's sort of underneath success while he has the ability to take the top off the defense. But I mean, Atlanta's going to get nothing done on the ground at all. We saw that Hill isn't the complete answer. And I mean, Ridley and Julio both saw plenty of snaps against, like you said, a bad defense. I really don't think you can go wrong. My biggest concern is, last week the Rams only threw 18 times. Was that a symptom of the matchup in that Chicago's real good against the pass, not so great against the run? Or is this a McVay concerted effort to try and get Gurley to be the center of the offense and not Jared Goff?
I just happened to look real quick on fftoday.com over the past 3 weeks. I mean, now granted, this isn't doing it by points per game, and the Rams have only played 2 of the past 3 weeks, but Cooper Kupp is wide receiver 94 over that time period. Now, like I said, it's obviously a little slanted since they've only played 2 of the 3 weeks, but
yeah. He had a nothing burger, right? I mean, he dropped a 0 on you. And then last week he had a touchdown called back because he didn't go an inch more. That would make him look a little better. But I don't know. I think you could start either and be happy. I don't really think either is going to totally disappoint you.
So for me, I think what it would come down to would be kind of what we've talked about is where are you at in positioning? Like, do you absolutely need this win? Like if you do, and I think I would consider going Calvin Ridley because that's what you're looking for, right? You're looking for the maximum upside. Not that Cooper Kupp can't get there, but I mean, Baltimore has arguably the best secondary in the league with Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters and Jimmy Smith, and Earl Thomas on the back end. Like this defense is legit. And so, as we know, Jared Goff is not good against even above average defenses, right? And so, like, this is tough. Like, I feel like if this is a win that you just absolutely have to have, like, I would probably shoot for the ceiling and go Calvin Ridley. But if not, like, then I'd probably go Cooper Kupp. Just because, we know Cooper Kupp is still going to be targeted. He's still likely going to see 20% of the targets. And sometimes, when you try to play, because, I mean, Julio could go out and get 300 yards in this game and, or 200 yards and Ridley only gets, finds 50 and maybe he finds a score. And if he doesn't, what have you. So I just, again, I think if I'm going for ultimate upside, it would be Ridley. And if not, I'd go Kupp. So I'm hedging.
Hedge life.
Oh, look at that. Trey from the Slack chat gives a whole shout out to Nate.
Thanks for
on Dwelly last week.
Anytime, if you ever need help picking a tight end against the Arizona defense, I'm your guy.
All right.
The healthy one.
Yeah. He did. He found the end zone twice, didn't he?
Yeah, and thank God he did, because that would not have been a pretty day if he hadn't. What did he get? 3 for 11 with 2 touchdowns, I think was his stat line.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of the Slack chat, before we get deep into the football talk, Declan had a very important question that we need to get to. I threw it out to the Slack channel if anyone had any non-fantasy questions, since my food takes are being exposed as being terrible at this point. He threw this one out. Soft shell or hard shell tacos? Where do you guys land?
I feel like you're a monster if you say soft shell. Like it's hard shell, in my opinion.
Oh, definitely soft. But I have to be specific. It has to be corn tortillas. Get this flour crap out of my life. No flour tortillas. It's got to be real, authentic corn tortillas, soft. I'll take that.
I'm also on the soft side, but I don't know anything about this corn versus flour business. That sounds like for someone who sips margaritas.
That's right.
Kev out here go pinky up with you sipping on that coffee again, buddy.
Yeah. I don't know. Like,
if you're gonna go hard shell, just give me nachos, because that shit's just gonna crumble and fall on your plate anyway. So just make it nachos at that point. Although I will say this, the 101 of fast food items, the cheesy gordita crunch from Taco Bell that has the soft and the hard shell.
Love that.
That is a take I can agree with.
Yes.
Crunch, but it has to be made right, because there's sometimes that it's not, and when it's not made correctly, like it has to be nice and hot and everything else. Like when it's nice and hot and everything else, then it's perfect. But if you get it at least, like sometimes I've gotten where it's like almost like a little cold, like it's terrible. It's awful. It's the worst thing ever.
There's a very fine line with Taco Bell food to begin with.
That is very true. That is very true. I'm much more of a Chipotle guy myself.
Who knew it was all about the chef at Taco Bell, just got to have the right one. Don't go on a Tuesday or like one of the days when the second tier chef's there. On a Friday when it's busy, right?
That is true. That is true. That is very, very true. So, well, thanks for that. Well, let's follow that up with a couple more questions that we got here. Is Jalen Samuels a must start this week if Connor is out? As we know, the Pittsburgh Steelers are facing the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, not only for the fact that he's going to be the top running back, but this might be another game where he sees 13 targets again with the carnage and the wreckage that has been left behind from the Browns game. I mean, Juju looks like he's out. Deontay Johnson looks like he's out. James Washington is now the quote-unquote top wide receiver. And then they signed a bunch of guys this week. Deon Cain, Amara Darboh. They even signed Kareth White, kind of just like a scat back kind of running back. So, yeah, I mean this will be a game where he will get all the rushing upside, and then again another double-digit target day is not out of the question for Samuels. So lock him in if Connor is out.
So I'm actually going to disagree with you here, Cody. I don't even know that Jaylen Samuels is the lead running back on his own team. Last week, Trey Edmonds significantly outsnapped Jaylen Samuels, and here's the kicker. He actually ran more routes than Jaylen Samuel. He ran 16 to Samuel's 12. And then they worked in Brooks, something or other. He played one snap, got one carry. So it might actually be Trey Edmonds, and the fact that there isn't this clear, we're going to give the balls to Samuels as much as possible, makes me a little hesitant. I don't think he's an auto start. He would be the one I'd lead more towards just because he has the history, but I don't like these trends from last week.
I think Edmonds will get worked in, but he's Samuels is that route thing is kind of throwing me off. But I mean, up until that point, Samuels is the clear receiving back. I mean, I'm sticking to my guns. Fuck you and your margaritas, Nate.
Hey, it totally threw me off. It came out of nowhere that Edmonds.
That's also like one of those things where Marlon Mack had been running more routes than Nyheim. Like it isn't translating into targets. You know what I mean? I still think Samuels is the option and the top guy there. Maybe they just didn't want to put him in because they were afraid Myles Garrett was going to try and kill him, and he should be put in jail for assault.
Good point. That's some epic foresight to know he was going to use a helmet as a weapon on someone. Let's make sure it's at least Mason Rudolph, our worst player on offense.
That is correct.
I have to imagine we're not too far off from seeing old Duck either. Duck Hodges here because Mason Rudolph.
Quack, quack, baby.
Yeah. So, and to be honest, like, I don't think any Steeler fan can go into this week's game thinking that they're going to win, right? Like, this very well could be the Bengals Super Bowl here, right? Like, this could be their one win they get this year.
What a time to be alive.
The Bengals don't even look like they want to win. Like we can't say that about the Dolphins. Like, the Dolphins appear like they're, like, at least well coached, and they actually have some fight in them, right? Like, the Bengals are just like, nah, like, we're good. We don't. And did you see, like, they did my man dirty last week? I thought maybe Andy Dalton was going to get in the game because Ryan Finley looked like he was hurt there for a minute, and Andy jumped up. He's ready. He's over there throwing fucking passes on the sideline. He's ready to get in there. I'm like, bring him in, coach. You're going to get your first win against the Raiders. And they never brought him in. Broke my heart.
It's because they didn't want the win.
I know. They would have won. And then, yes.
Yeah, Andy Dalton's just got too many wins in his powerful rocket arm.
I know. If you've looked, I mean, he is like, if you look at through their age 32 season, him and Tom Brady, if you compare them, they're identical. Okay. So I think if you put on Andy Dalton on the Patriots, I don't know how many Super Bowl rings does he have. Could we talk about something different here? I don't know. We'll never know.
It'd be awful suspicious if Tua gets a career-ending hip injury and all of a sudden we see Andy Dalton out there again. I mean, it's pretty transparent, but.
Yeah, so I guess we will see. So another question is, which Colts running back is the one to pick up? Which I think is a question everybody's asking, because I think immediately the knee-jerk reaction was Jonathan Williams, right? Like, where did Jonathan Williams come from? A couple of years ago, we were all hyped about Jonathan Williams, right?
Yep.
And he got cut. He looked like he was going to make the roster. We all felt like, maybe that he actually had a shot of like having a relevant role coming off that. I I think it was the year after what the Carlos Williams, LaShawn McCoy kind of thing, and then Carlos Williams ate himself and then smoked some weed and got it kicked out of the league. So, but then we thought Jonathan Williams was going to be a thing, and then he got cut, and now all of a sudden he resurfaces. And to be honest with me, if you'd have asked me on Saturday about Jonathan Williams, I would have told you I didn't even know he was on the Colts roster, to be honest with you. So as the NFL Red Zone's going on, they said Jonathan Williams. I'm like, wait, what? So I had to go look at it. Oh, okay. Jonathan Williams is on the Colts. All right. And then Jonathan Williams smashes 13 carries. What was it? 113 yards and a touchdown. So I think heading in, everyone was like, yeah, definitely. Yeah, Jonathan Williams is a top pickup this week. And Marlon Mack broke a fractured hand, could be out 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, this could be like a league-winning type of play here over the next couple of weeks. But no, but there's Jordan Wilkins and there's Nyheim Hines. So, we thought maybe that Jordan Wilkins, because he was out last week, wouldn't be back, but it sounds like he's all systems go, and he's going to be back for this Texans game. So at this point, which one are you guys adding?
Man, this is such a hard one because I think Williams had shown a little bit more than Wilkins had. Like Wilkins has had his flashes here and there, but the only reason why Williams was even active was because Wilkins was inactive. So, I mean, going off of, that kind of thought process, I think it should be Wilkins, but if they're going to work him in slower or, if they like what they've seen from Jonathan Williams, they want to get him more touches. Like, I really don't know where to go. Like, if you're forcing me to pick one, I guess I'll go Wilkins, but I have zero conviction with that. Do either of you guys have a stronger take?
Not really. I mean, the worry is that the old depth chart matters more to the coach than what he actually saw with his eyeballs on the field, because of loyalty and putting in their time and work ethic and all those things, which makes you think it's going to be Wilkins. But Williams, he flashed. Like, I feel like he at least deserves a chance. Maybe the answer is just, if you have to have one, they're playing the Texans in both games that Deshaun Watson had a crappy game. He comes back and has a great game. Yeah, I think he's in line to do it again. So maybe this turns out to be a shootout and you just take your shot on Nyheim Hines, especially in a PPR league, and just say, I'm going to take the middle of the road points. I may miss the smash game from one of the JWs, but I at least know I'm going to get 8 targets from Nyheim Hines and maybe turns one of those catches into a touchdown.
So that's exactly what I was going to say. It was going to be Nyheim Hines. If you go back even to look at last year, whenever Marlon Mack went down, everybody thought it was going to be Jordan Wilkins, and it turned out to be Nyheim Hines, who had 70% of the touches when Marlon Mack was out last season. And so I definitely think it's Nyheim Hines who's the guy to own, especially mainly in PPR formats. Because this game against the Houston, this is a must-win game for them. Because you can make a case for either side, but I think more so for the Texans. And I think right now, as it sits, the Texans are out of the playoffs. Like, if the playoffs started today, so I mean, they really can't suffer another loss. And then not to mention that after this, I believe they have I believe they have the Patriots after this. Yeah, next week. So. Like, this is almost a must-win game for them. So I feel like if you see this team come out and, like, I think this could be a back-and-forth affair. So I definitely think it's Nyheim Hines. If I had to pick one of the other two, I do think it's Jonathan Williams. Like, Jordan Wilkins, I've never really seen anything that's really ever impressed me. Like, he's the quintessential Jag. At least Jonathan Williams, I think, has some upside. And I think would be one that you would think, coming off that kind of effort, that they would be looking to give him a little bit more opportunity to see what they have in him versus Jordan Wilkins. But if I had to pick somebody, it's definitely Nyheim Hines. I think game script's going to favor him. I think he's definitely going to be the pass catching option. And he even got, I believe last week, got some goal line opportunities as well. So I definitely think it's Nyheim Hines, which I think he's going to be probably the easiest one to acquire, because I think most people are going to look at what Jonathan Williams did and just automatically, float right to him.
Yeah, especially for those who don't realize that Wilkins had the limited practice today.
Yeah. So anyways, I think that's kind of the way that I would go with it. I think it's Nyheim Hines, and then I think after that, you kind of, if you had to pick one, I would probably plant my flag onto Jonathan Williams, but I wouldn't feel fantastic about it. I honestly, I guess the one that I think that I would rather have if I had a top waiver ad, or you're trying to spend some fat budget, because let's be honest, we're into week 12 now. We don't got a lot of time left. Can't be saving it forever because we're running out of time. It's kind of like coaches that go into halftime with the 3 timeouts. Like, okay, you can't use them whenever you come out of it. So, it's time to start spending that money. And so I think it might be Bo Scarborough, because to be honest, like, he does have that backfield and there's nobody else really there to question him. Now, can he keep it up? I don't know, because the no Lions running back has really done a whole lot, but I think at least what we saw from him last week is encouraging. Of course, I don't think he's going to be a high pass catcher. I think that still is J.D. McKissic's job, but I think that if I had to make a decision out of all of them, it probably would be Bo Scarborough.
So about Bo, he ran 9 routes, which is actually the same amount of routes as J.D. McKissic. The route leader was actually Ty Johnson, who did nothing with it. But that's because I think Ty Johnson is just a guy. But the most efficient player was, again, McKissic. But Scarborough got the goal line work, and they got Washington next week. But that's probably the last time you can use him. So understand that if you're picking up Bo, it's probably just a 1-week rental.
Well, I mean, I think you could say the same thing about the Indianapolis guys, because Football Doc said last night that he usually does a pretty good job of predicting these things, that there's a pretty good chance that Marlon Mack could actually be back by week 13. So I think all of these are probably 1-week rentals. So again, stockpile the Alexander Madisons and the Rashad Pennies and the Tony Pollards of the world, because those are the ones that are, if anything happens, there is a no doubt about it chance that they are an absolute stud.
Yeah, I basically had the same feelings. Shameless plug to the TFA waiver wire article, where I basically said the same thing. Was looking at the list of guys, Bo Scarborough and the Colts guys, that I was actually more interested in the high upside, high value handcuffs. So if you're not needing someone to basically just plug in, and you need someone for this week because you have to win out in order to get into the playoffs, that's exactly what I would be doing. I'd be looking at your Pollards, Gus Edwards. I mean, I guess Rashad Penny to a lesser extent, but Madison, Pollard, and Gus Edwards would be my top 3 of the handcuffs.
No, 100%. So, yeah, I like that. I think that's a strong take. Let's see. Okay, this is a good one. General Zod. There's been a lot of debate today about. I saw a lot of David Johnson talk. Is he droppable?
I'm going to live that hedge life, and I will say it depends who for. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, though, right? Like,
we could get more. Like, something has to be wrong with him, right? Like, people are saying, like, oh, he's just washed. I'm like, no, he's not. You don't fall off a cliff in a week, okay? Or whatever, because like before the injury, he was running back 5, and we were not talking about, man, David Johnson just does not look like David Johnson. I mean, dude was catching 30-yard touchdown bombs. Like, he looked like David Johnson, right? They don't have a great offensive line, anything like that. So, some of his runs weren't as, weren't highlight reel worthy that we saw, but he was still heavily utilized as a pass catcher. You saw that. Like, everything else was still there. Like I said, he was running back 5 prior to his injury, and then he gets hurt. Right. And now it's like I don't know what's going on, because he's been back. And last week they're like, oh, he's not on the injury designation. And he doesn't play at all. And it's like, what is going on? Like, so like I have to wonder, like, is there actually an injury going on here that they're just not talking about, or something's happening here? Because it doesn't make sense. I don't know if the Monstars showed up and zapped his powers or what, because like you saw the one highlight clip a couple of weeks ago against the Bucs where he was on an outside run. And like I said, it looked like, current day Jerome Bettis out there trying to run the football. Like, what is going on here? and you just have to feel like there's an injury happening here because it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and if there is an injury, I mean, they are on bye, so maybe he uses the time off to get right. But at the same time, remember that the same amount of time used for healing is applying equally to Chase Edmonds. It's entirely possible that the reins have just been passed from David Johnson to Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds. So in a redraft league, is he droppable? Sure, of course he's droppable. But if you want to hold on to him and see if it's an injury thing like you're describing, I wouldn't blame you because like you said, something's wrong. He's just not, he doesn't look like the same player he was earlier in the year.
Yeah, another question we got about someone being droppable or not came from Rachel, and she wanted to know if Jared Goff was droppable.
Short, sweet, yes. No, 100%, yes. 100%, easy.
Yeah, he's been someone we've been getting a lot of questions on about whether he's droppable or not over the past couple of weeks, and the answer 2 or 3 weeks ago was yes, and the answer today is yes.
He is horrendous. Like, he truly is. And gosh, they gave him $134 million. Oh my goodness. What are you doing? What are you doing, Rams? But yeah, he is. He's awful. But I don't know. So, do we have no ones? Okay, I guess we can answer this one real quick. Still alive in my survivor pool. I've already used Dallas, New England, Baltimore, Seattle, Green Bay, Minnesota. Who are you going with this week?
Oh boy. Would you guys feel confident going with Cleveland over Miami? Is that one you would try and pull out and use this week?
Yeah, that one's good. I mean, in survivor pools, I hate picking road teams, but the Lions at the Redskins is something to consider. Bears, Giants, if Chase Daniel starts, does that give you more confidence that the Bears can win the game against the Giants at home?
I mean, if he hasn't used New Orleans yet, the Panthers are traveling to New Orleans. Could go there. That might be the one that I would target actually if he hasn't used if he has yet to use the Saints.
There you go.
I think you go Cleveland. I think Detroit is another one you definitely could go. I think a smart move, whatever you're trying to do a survivor pool, not that it's foolproof, but I think looking at where smart money is coming in terms of Vegas is a way to do this. So basically you can go to and look to see where a line opened to see where it's currently at. Right now, like the sharp money is coming in on Detroit. Right now, that actually opened up as a 1.5 point favorite, has been bet up to 3.5. And then you look at Cleveland, who opened at a 9, who's now up to a 10.5 point favorite. So I think that I think Detroit would be one that I think you could definitely go with. I think Detroit can get a win this week. Jeff Driscoll actually has looked pretty solid the last couple of weeks, and somebody we'll talk about. And I think the other one, like I said, if you wanted to go Cleveland, I wouldn't be upset with that either. All right, so I think that is all the questions. So why don't we go ahead and jump in to this upcoming week? We've pretty much discussed everything. So we're going to start with the quarterback position this week, heading into week 12. We got some pretty solid matchups this week. Just looking at some of the totals for the week, we have Tampa Bay, Atlanta. That's a 54.5 point. It opened at a 54.5 point. And then you have, Seattle, Philadelphia, which should be a pretty solid game. And then from there, we have Dallas, New England. I mean, there's some pretty solid matchups this week. I think the Oakland Jets game could be low-key fun. But there's also some really terrible ones. Denver, Buffalo is actually open at a 35 point. Like, that is about as low as it possibly can get for two teams.
Yikes.
Oh,
Well, kudos to the NFL for actually getting primetime games right this week. You got Colts Texans on Thursday. That's going to be fun. Packers 49ers Sunday night. They actually flexed the game to make it interesting. And then you got Ravens Rams. Those are all pretty good primetime matchups.
yeah, finally we got rid of the Bengals Steelers, isn't that the one it was?
No, Browns Steelers.
No. Oh no, I'm thinking of the Dolphins Steelers. That's what it was.
Oh, that before they flexed it.
No, they played.
That was like a Monday night game.
Oh,
like,
right.
Yeah. So, anyways, let's open it up and let's kind of just open the floor to the quarterback position this week. Like I've mentioned, I think guys like Matt Ryan, Deshaun Watson, even Drew Brees, Jameis Winston, I think you can feel pretty solid about. But I think you have some other questions about a lot of the players that are going to be ranked inside the top 12 for a lot of people whenever people go to look at rankings this week. Let's start with Lamar Jackson. Let's have a conversation about him. I know the dude has pretty much been matchup proof this year, but the Rams do pose. They do have one of the better defenses in the league. Their front, they can definitely get pressure on the quarterback, and we've seen teams that have actually been able to limit him somewhat. Like if you look at the week against the Chiefs, he was not fantastic. And then there was one other week, I think he only scored 13. Not that you're probably thinking about sitting Lamar Jackson, but what is your guys' overall thoughts and what should people be expecting from him this week? I don't think this is a week where you can expect him to go out and get you 35 or 40, but where are you guys coming in on Lamar Jackson this week?
I'm playing him. I don't see any reason why he slows down. It's going to regress, of course. He's not going to throw 4 touchdowns, have a perfect passer rating every single week. But he just has such a beautiful floor with that rushing that there's no reason he's leaving in your starting lineup. You got to ride with him until the fantasy playoffs and hopefully fantasy championship with him, because he's just you can't beat the floor that he gives you.
Would you say if you were a team, and I don't know, let me say if you had these two players, let's say if you had like a Lamar Jackson and a Matt Ryan, who would you start?
I think I'd still go Lamar, even in a good matchup. I realize that Matt Ryan has a spectacular matchup against the Buccaneers, and they're almost certainly going to throw the ball a ton, but it's just the consistency that Lamar gives you. It's about mitigating risk. What is the greater chance of happening, that Lamar doesn't get you 50 or that Matt Ryan doesn't throw 3 touchdowns? To me, I think that Lamar has the lower risk of busting than Matt Ryan, even in a great matchup like that.
Yeah, this is one of those scenarios where if I have Lamar in one of my redraft leagues and I haven't carried an extra quarterback since, just because that's not a decision I would want to make. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to feel good putting Lamar on the bench, but man, in that scenario, I would be tempted to start Matt Ryan just because you can't run on Tampa Bay. And we've already talked, Atlanta has no rushing offense to speak of. So it's just going to be probably 35, 40 attempts for Matt Ryan throwing against a pass funnel defense. So man, that's like we've been talking about the past couple of weeks. If you're in a scenario where you need to win to get in, I'm going Matt Ryan. If you're, if you've already got it kind of locked up and, like this week doesn't mean too much, then, obviously doesn't matter all that much to you. But if you need to win to get in, I think I would bench Lamar in that scenario, because they're as good as Lamar has been. Like the Rams defense is pretty solid. Like the only receiver worth even talking about is Marquise Brown. Right, he targets his tight ends more. I think the Rams are only allowing 9.3 half PPR points per game to the tight end position. Have they faced somebody like Andrews? Probably not. Maybe if they did the Chiefs and the Rams play, Kev?
Huh.
Okay, so chances are they haven't faced somebody like Andrews, but at the same time, Corey Littleton is at least solid in coverage. So yeah, I mean that is a scenario where I think I would bench Lamar. But again, this is one of those cases where if I have somebody like Lamar who's just a plugged in every week quarterback one, I'm not even carrying another quarterback.
Right, I agree. I mean, if I had Matt Ryan and I was faced with that situation, one, I would ask why you probably had made a trade to this point. But yeah, I think I would consider Matt Ryan over Lamar Jackson. I actually, in my rankings, I think I have Matt Ryan ranked above Lamar Jackson this week. But so yeah, I mean, I think you can, but like in any other format, like yeah, I mean, you're plugging him in no matter what. I would temper a little bit of expectations. I don't think he's going to just go nuclear, but I still think he's solid 20, 25 point because of his ability to break out of the pocket and use his legs. I mean, he's on pace for what, 1,300 yards rushing this year, which is like great for a solid RB1. So, yeah. So yeah, he's been fantastic. So we did get another question, which fits right in kind of what we're talking about. Isaiah Soto, Jacoby Brissett, or Tom Brady this week. We get Jacoby Brissett playing Houston and Tom Brady going up against Dallas.
I'll go Brissett. Whenever he's been forced to throw, he's had some really solid games. Tom Brady just doesn't look the same. The Cowboys secondary is solid. And their rushing defense is kind of where their hole is. So maybe we see more of a Sony Michel kind of game here from New England. So I'll go Brissett.
Yeah, I agree. The Patriots offense just looks out of sync right now. Tom Brady's setting records for interception or incompletions. He just doesn't really have much of an upside anymore. I thought we'd see it last week, and he didn't show it. So if you're not going to do it against Philly, why are you going to do it against Dallas?
Though we say this I feel like we have this conversation every year surrounding the Patriots where we all sort of they ride a high and we're all like, man, this is the greatest team that we've ever seen. And then they come crashing down and we're like, oh, Brady, he's washed.
That's it.
Let's he's done. All right, let's move on from him. He's out. He's gone. Right? So like Dallas doesn't scare me. Their defense doesn't scare me. This is in New England. I think this matters. And so I think Tom Brady is a better option. My question for Jacoby Brissett would be more so that I would want to know is T.Y. Hilton back? Because if T.Y. Hilton's back, it's a much more of a conversation where I would maybe lean towards Jacoby Brissett. But if T.Y. Hilton is out, I would probably go Brady. So I don't know. I think you can kind of, for me, I don't know. I think this is a prime bounce back spot for Brady, and this is when we come back. I'm like, okay, yeah. So now they still have it. He is still good. So this is just what kind of happens with New England. I don't know. I almost wonder if they do it on purpose. Like if Bill does this as like a learning experience every year, because this happens, and then they get their heads beat in every single year, and we all have this discussion, and we all do this to ourselves, and then all of a sudden they go on a run, and then they're in the Super Bowl, and then they win the Super Bowl again. It happens every fucking year with this team, and so it's always like we're living in Groundhog's Day. So until Tom Brady hangs it up or leaves New England, like it's tough to not, So I think with this one, I think that this is much more. I feel like that. I think especially at home, I think I would just roll Brady. And I do say it was interesting to see N'Keal Harry last week rolling as the team's wide receiver 3 last week. I thought that was over Jacoby Myers, who, that was N'Keal Harry's first week last week, and was inserted as the wide receiver 3. So very sloppy game, but I feel like this one has a little bit more shootout potential.
So a quarterback that used to be in New England, what are you guys doing with Jimmy Garoppolo this week at home, but going up against Green Bay? As of now, he is Fantasy Pros number 11 consensus ranked quarterback on the week. I was a little surprised to see him in the top 12 going up against Green Bay. What do you guys think? Is he a QB1 for the week, or would you be looking to start somebody that might be below him over Garoppolo?
I think it's so of the options that would be relatively available for me, I think Baker Mayfield would be somebody that I would start over him. I would start Derek Carr over him, and I would start Sam Darnold over him. I think that right now I have Jimmy Garoppolo as my 11th quarterback. Carson Wentz is 12 to wrap out the top 12. I do have Brady at 13, just right outside of that. But so for me, like I just think like I do think Sam Darnold, like we saw last week, he finally kind of exploded a little bit, had a really solid week, and I just think this matchup against Oakland is just as good. And we know that the thing is with the San Francisco that they really try to run the football, and I think they're going to try to do that. Green Bay is terrible against the run, and I think that is going to be something they're going to try to do. And I think this game could end up being a little bit more low scoring because of the two defenses, and I think they both really try to run the football. And so for me, I think just off pure volume, I think that Sam Darnold is somebody that I would rather go with, or like I said, a Derek Carr or Baker Mayfield, who as options that are kind of widely available.
Totally agree. I think Kyle Shanahan said after the game that this was the first time in his career he had to abandon the run. I kind of feel like he took that personally. So I got a feeling that the running game is going to come back with a force next week. So downgrade Garoppolo a little bit. He's only thrown 4 touchdowns against Arizona, and he's not playing Arizona next week.
Yeah, Kev, someone you mentioned that you would start over Garoppolo was Baker, and he's actually my quarterback start for the week. I mean, like going up against the Dolphins, you don't have to say much. But what Baker struggled with this year has been pressure. And PFF has the Dolphins as the lowest ranked for their pass rush grade, and they have the 4th worst coverage grade. So, I mean, none of those things should be an issue for them. I mean, the only thing you might worry about is maybe they jump out to a quick lead and then it becomes the Chubb and Hunt show. But I think Baker still gets probably 18 to 20 fantasy points before we have to worry about them pulling the plug if they do on the passing game. So Baker would be my quarterback start of the week. What do you guys have to say about that?
I like Baker this week. It seems like he's starting to find a little bit of a rhythm now that they've really narrowed the targets to essentially just Kareem Hunt, Jarvis Landry, and Odell Beckham. That seems to help him with the pressure because he's getting the ball out faster to one of his 3 options. And I think that the matchup's good for him. I temper my expectations a little bit given his play all year, but it does seem like he's turning a corner a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is a perfect matchup, right? I think this is a matchup that you feel confident in starting Odell Beckham. And, you know, I think I think they can score at will here. And so I think this is a really solid Baker week. Like I said, I have him at QB7. For me, I guess I just talked about him. One of my, really favorite plays this week would be Sam Darnold. Again, going against the Oakland defense, a pretty solid team total as well. I think this is a week that you can actually play someone if you're hurting at wide receiver with all the teams that are on bye. I think, a lot of people have probably cut and released Robbie Anderson. He found the end zone last week. Didn't do much more than that, but I do think this is a good week for Robbie Anderson. The Raiders secondary is atrocious, and so I do think that this is another solid Sam Darnold week. People that probably tried to play him the last couple of weeks before some of these performances were not very happy, but we're finally getting the fruits of what we discussed so much heading up to this. I feel like over the last month and a half, we've been talking about Sam Darnold, somebody to pick up, and he's finally paying off. So I do think that he's in a fantastic spot. And honestly, I may come to regret this, and maybe some people will call me a homer and saying what I'm about to say, but I think the Jets beat the Raiders this week. So
could see it.
I don't think some of the Raiders fans, like, that I see, and like I have some friends on Facebook that I see that are Raiders fans, and they're like all on cloud nine right now. We're going to the play. I'm like, dude, you guys are terrible. You guys are going to get your ass kicked in the first. If you go into the playoffs, you're going to get destroyed. Like, you're not good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, it's fun. You guys, got more wins than I think people expected this year, but you're still not a good team. Your defense is still horrendous. For the most part. And I think that this is a week that they drop one and then, then they get smashed in the head by, the real best team in this division. So I think this is a really good game. And I think that there is players here that you can target. I think you can pick up Sam Darnold and play him with confidence this week. I think Robbie Anderson is another way you can go. And I think that where he is probably widely available in most days, a lot of people have given up on him because he really hasn't done a whole lot. We've seen, the ceiling of Robbie Anderson when this offense is rolling. And, he's somebody that can be a solid wide receiver too. And I think you can get that this week from him as well. So I really like Sam Darnold this week. And he's one of my favorite pickups he's one of my favorite waiver ads. If you're really hurting a quarterback, because they keeps rolling after this thing. They get Cincinnati and Miami the next couple of weeks after this as well. So, this is wheels up right now for any Jets.
Yeah, I agree. And just to kind of jump a little bit all over the place here, Ryan Griffin is my tight end play for a lot of the reasons you were saying, Kevin, as far as somebody who's widely available that you can pick up and stream this week. Ryan Griffin only had 4% ownership in Yahoo leagues. So that's he's who I had written down as my start of the week at the tight end position. But since you were talking about the Jets already and just someone who's widely available to pick up, Ryan Griffin is a name I would float out there for that.
Yeah. So, and I mean, Nate, is there anything else you want to say? But you have Matt Ryan, which I think we kind of discussed this game already. But anything else you need to say about him? I mean, I think we've all come to the agreement that Matt Ryan is a fantastic play. I think some people might be nervous this week about like a Jameis Winston and, playing the Falcons, considering what the Falcons have done the last 2 weeks. But here's two things. One, Kyle Allen is not a good quarterback. Like, I think we can agree upon that now. It's hilarious how these things work. And we're very short-term people, right? Recency bias is real. That's why we always talk about it. And everybody was quick to crown Kyle Allen as the future. Hey, go ahead and cut Cam Newton. Let's trade him. Dude, get him out of town, bro. We don't need Cam Newton. Get rid of him. We got Kyle Allen. We're good. Kyle Allen's a franchise quarterback. Same thing with Gardner Minshew, right? Same stuff that's happened. And, we live in the moment, and sometimes, a lot of times it burns us. And I don't think Kyle Allen's very good. Maybe he can be. Maybe he'll develop into one. But as of right now, I do not think that he is some exciting story. He looks awful, and we should have known it last week when everybody was really wanting to add him and play him, or in DFS when everybody wanted to play him because they were playing the Falcons. Is the Falcons' defense better than maybe what it was before? Possibly. But are they all of a sudden now an elite defense? No. Are they an above-average defense? No. The things that we know with Tampa is Tampa's still going to throw the ball because they cannot run the football. And if they fall behind with their terrible defense, they're going to be throwing the rock. Jameis Winston might throw 72 interceptions like he does every week, but he's going to be going out there giving it his all. And I think it's great stuff for players like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So, yeah, I'm playing even like a Jameis Winston with absolute confidence this week as well. I think this game could be – we see 50, 60 points scored here.
I mean, Jameis is what he is, right? Like, you're never starting Jameis and being like, you know what? I think this is a week that he just throws 350 yards, 4 touchdowns, and no turnovers because, that's you know what you're getting when you start Jameis. Like if you see he has 6 turnovers, like, you're not going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe I started him and he did that to my fantasy team. Like, that's in the wheelhouse.
It is tilting. It is so tilting because, like, last week I was, was watching games and I needed him just to do a little bit more. I mean, he was still fine. What do you have? 2 or 3 turnovers last week? I think he still gave you like 19, 20 fantasy points last week. Like, he didn't kill you. which is crazy with someone who gives up as many turnovers as he does. Now, if you're in a league that really heavily penalizes you for his turnovers, then he's not as good, and is not somebody that you really want. But, if you're not, it's all right. You can live with it because he's going to go out there and chuck the rock the entire game. And that's really all we're looking for in fantasy football, to be honest with you. So, anyways, I think let's go ahead. I think the only other stuff that I wanted to say really quickly was some players that I'm a little bit more down upon. Like I actually would probably bench Josh Allen this week. I know it's tough to say, but I do not think, at least this week, that Denver's defense is actually elite. And I don't think people will come away thinking like what Minnesota was able to do against them. I think that was more a product of how bad the offense was for Denver versus how good. Like in terms of DVOA, they are number 1 in rush defense, and they are number 5 in pass defense. Like, this defense is still legit, and they've gotten better and better. This is not a game that I want to be targeting Josh Allen. Yes, Josh Allen is somebody that can help you out with his legs. So if you actually had to start him, I would. But if somebody like a Sam Darnold was available, I would definitely add him, and I'd rather play him this week against Josh Allen in a low total game against the Denver Broncos. Like, no, thank you. The other one that I would want to play would be Jeff Driscoll. We've talked. I really, surprised to see what Jeff Driscoll has done. We've seen Jeff Driscoll in the past with Cincinnati and other, and in the preseason, he just hasn't really looked great. He's had glimpses, but this so far against what's been 2 solid teams that they've played so far, he's actually performed well above expectation. And I don't think a lot of people thought he was going to go out and do what he did this past week against Dallas. And I think he ended up with like 24 or something like that, 25 fantasy points, somewhere in that range. He's using his legs. He's had at least 30 yards rushing in each of his last 2 games he started. He gets Washington. They have, he still has, Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones as weapons. So, with this factoring in his ability to run, like Jeff Driscoll's an absolutely great start this week. And other ones like, and then the last one that I would not play would probably be Jared Goff. Like I said, you might as well drop him. He's going against Baltimore. Of course, he'll probably go out and throw over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. So that's just the way it works. But yeah, so I think other than that, I don't think there's anything else that we really need to discuss with the quarterback position. So we can jump over to the running back position. And while we're at it, since we do have a question in here in the chat, we'll go ahead and hit that up because it is running back related. Which is the better running back pickup for Week 12, Geis or Adrian Peterson? It is 100%, without a shadow of a doubt for me, Darius Geis.
Yep, I agree, especially if you're in any kind of PPR league, whether it's, half or full PPR. I think it's Darius Geis. I mean, he only had the 1 catch last week, but it went for a 45-yard touchdown. He was second in snaps behind Smallwood, actually, and Peterson was third, but he had 2 fewer carries than Peterson. But this game, I don't think we see them get behind as quickly as they did against the Jets, so it should stay a little closer, which should mean more snaps for Geis and therefore more touches. So I'm going to roll with Geis there.
Right, and this was his first game back from injury, so they may have been ramping up a little bit. So I think that Peterson starts to get phased out a little more. He did start the game, but he barely played after about the first quarter, and they started letting Geis get more and more involved. So I agree completely. It's Geis.
I don't think we see Geis get a kind of like a bell cow workload because, I mean, there's really no reason for them to do that with the position they're in. But I do agree. It's Geis over Peterson. I would just caution that I don't think we see him get, like 75% of the touches or anything between now and the end of the year.
Right.
All right. So heading into this week, like we talked about with the running backs, I don't think we really need to have a discussion with Christian McCaffrey. It's Christian fucking McCaffrey. We don't need to talk about Alvin Kamara. Carolina is absolutely horrendous against the run, despite what they were able to do last week against Atlanta. Alvin Kamara is a must start. Some of these other ones, what is your guys' thoughts this week? I guess I'll kind of bunch these together a little bit, but like an Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley types who, Zeke going against New England, Saquon going against Chicago, Saquon coming off the bye, but before that did not look great coming off injury. I think he had 13 carries for -1 yard or 1 yard or something like that in his last game that he played. Are you guys starting these guys this week with confidence, despite, somebody that you probably invested, your number 1 or number 2 or number 3 overall pick on?
So certainly Saquon's been disappointing. He's got the injury risk, and he's not doing any of those burst plays that he had last year. Last year he had a lot of inefficient runs that we're seeing again this year, where he just sort of runs right into the line, gets stopped for 1 or 2 yards, or he tries to make something happen, loses a couple of yards. But then he kind of, like Barry Sanders, would bust a 60-yard touchdown and make your day. But I think you can still start him with confidence just because he's so involved in that passing game. And that's where he's doing most of his damage still. And Giants are always losing, so he's always on the field. He's going to be catching passes while they try and play catch up. I know they're playing Chicago, so they may not have to do it as much this week, but still they're going to keep him involved in that passing game, which makes him very startable.
Yeah, I mean, you're starting with confidence. Maybe you're not expecting, the 30-point game that I think a lot of fantasy owners were expecting coming into the year. Chicago's run defense hasn't been as good with who I think Akeem Hicks hitting IR. He's involved in the passing game, so you're not going to go away from him. And as far as Zeke goes, he hasn't had his massive games with regularity, like we were expecting coming into the year. But I think New England's run defense is where they're more vulnerable. I think their overall numbers probably look better because they jump out on a lot of teams, and those teams are then forced to pass. So their rushing numbers on paper look a lot better. But I mean, Miles Sanders didn't have a great day by any means, but he was able to find some holes, and he had a couple decent runs. That offensive line, I mean, they're probably comparable between Dallas and Philly, but no one's going to argue that Zeke is the better talent over somebody like Miles Sanders. So I definitely don't think you have to even debate sitting Zeke this week.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I wouldn't go as far as say I would want to sit any of them, but I don't think either one of them are in I think Saquon's in a better spot than what Ezekiel Elliott is, because if you look at New England's only given up one rushing touchdown on the season. Hell, they've only given up one running back or one touchdown to a running back all year, because they've not given up a passing touchdown either. They've allowed the fewest points to the position as well. We talk about how elite Tampa Bay is against the run, and you can make a case that New England's right there with them. So, I don't know. I don't think this is a great spot for him. And the other issue for Zeke is if they do fall behind, is we know that he just is not getting as much work as a pass catcher as we were accustomed to. Last year, he was somebody that was heavily targeted. Now we're seeing with the evolution of Dak Prescott and being, a better passer with more weapons, they're just not using Zeke in that way. So I think this is, we have seen some games for New England where they've struggled a little bit. The Browns game where Nick Chubb was kind of able to run all over them a little bit, fumbled a couple times. But so we have seen a little bit teams be able to run the football, but it's just not with any regularity. And like I said, if they do fall behind, I think that has to worry a little bit. Again, you're not sitting Ezekiel Elliott. I'm not saying that, but I think that I wouldn't be starting him with as much confidence as you might be. It did factor into, the other stuff with Saquon. For me, I think it's more of again, their offensive line is horrendous. He is banged up. He is not seeing those explosive plays. Chicago, despite, losing Akeem Hicks, still has not, they've been very Jekyll and Hyde against the run. There's been weeks where they've been pretty solid. Then there's other games that they've just been horrendous and they've given up a ton of points. You go back and look at the Philly game where Philly went off against them. Even Todd Gurley had one of his better games of the year last week. So I do think this is a sneaky week for Saquon. So I'd feel a bit more better about him. But so let's talk about some of these other ones a little bit further down. Let's talk about some of the guys you guys have this week. Philip Lindsay's an interesting one because, most of the season we really saw Philip Lindsay kind of split the work with Royce Freeman. And there was a lot of weeks that we saw Royce Freeman even out snapping Philip Lindsay, and we had the head coach come out this past week and talk about how he was going to get more work for Philip Lindsay, and on the rare chance that it actually happened, I know you have Philip Lindsay this week, and this is a way you can actually beat Buffalo is on the ground. They are not great against the running backs. So what I know that's who you have, Nate, this week, and what else do you like about him this week?
Yeah, so a lot of it is exactly what you started to talk about. The coaching staff said, hey, we need to get Philip Lindsay more involved, and that actually led to a season high in snap counts for Philip Lindsay. Game script helped a little bit as Denver was up by most of that game. But the most interesting thing about Philip Lindsay's playing time is that he ran twice as many routes as Royce Freeman last week, which was a totally flipped script from earlier trends this year. I think that the coaching staff said we got to get Lindsay on the field more. We got to get him more involved in the passing game. And that led to a pretty solid week against a pretty good defense in Minnesota. So like you said, Buffalo is pretty weak to the running game. They actually have a defense that's specifically designed to stop the pass. So they sort of funnel offensives towards the run to sell out to stop the pass. So I think Lindsay sees some more running lanes that get open, and I think he continues to see a increase in playing time, or at least something comparable with what he saw last week.
I like that. I don't think he's a lot of people that people are going to want to. Probably people hadn't felt as great about him, but I do think that he's somebody that looks like he is moving forward. A great play. And, if you're playing DFS, he's certainly somebody who is cheap this week. He's about as low as he's been in a while, and he's somebody that I'd want to target there as well. So I do like him as a running back play this week. I guess another one we could talk about, I know we've sort of, you have Josh Jacobs this week, Cody. Josh Jacobs so far this season really has been pretty solid. I would like to see more usage out of him as a pass catcher. But, I don't think you can ask for a better matchup this week. But what do you like about him so much this week?
Yeah, I mean, it was more I was a little surprised that I saw him at 5. So really what I just wanted to throw out to you guys, do you think, like, let's just say, like, your typical home league kind of fantasy players, do you think they view Jacobs as an RB1 going forward? Because whenever you drafted him, you probably just drafted him as like your RB2 or 3, more than likely. I think he's definitely in the conversation to be an RB1 for the rest of the year. But do you think that's how he's perceived? I guess, like I said, just amongst like the, your work league, family league kind of fantasy players.
No, I don't think he would be perceived as like that yet, but he should be, because he is getting the usage, he is getting the opportunities. Now, the couple things I'll say is their schedule this year has been pretty light, and some of that he's been able to take advantage of. I would, like I said, especially like something like next year, I would like to see him utilize more as a pass catcher, which is weird because in Alabama, that's kind of what he was known for, is much more of a pass catcher, and he just really haven't utilized him that as of now. Yeah, I mean, I think he should be, at least moving forward. I mean, I think the rest of the season you could pretty much view him on a week-to-week basis as really as an RB1, and he should be.
Right, and he is being used a little more frequently in the passing game. So for 2 straight weeks, he's led the team or the backfield in targets. 5 in week 10, and last week he saw 3 in a very plus matchup. So Richard and Washington are still annoyingly on the field. Josh Jacobs still only out there about 65% of the time, so he's not elite in the snap count numbers. He's not an RB1 there, but he has been so darn efficient behind that really good offensive line.
Yeah, just like I said, I just thought that was an interesting talking point, because like obviously amongst us we look at him that way with his usage and everything. Looking back 3 weeks, 28 carries, 16 carries, and he had 23 last week. He had 2 100-yard games in that span as well. that was just something when I pulled up the Fantasy Pros rankings and I saw him at 5. I was like I said, I was just a little surprised. The other guy that I had down here, we already talked about, Darius Guice. Like I said, just comes down to he should be more involved this week. And the Lions are giving up the most half PPR points, fantasy points per game to the position. So those are my two that I had down. Kev, who do you have written down for your start this week?
Well, I have a few. One is Tevin Coleman. Last week he was not fantastic. Really was looking really bad up until I think that last drive where they started using him and dumping it off to him, and he picked up a few more points because it was really looking to be a really poor day for Tevin Coleman last week. So, but I think in this matchup against Green Bay, we know Green Bay is not good against the run. And I think like we kind of talked about, they really want to try to go out and establish the run, probably keep Aaron Rodgers off the field. So I think you can kind of view Tevin Coleman this week as like a top 12 back. And so I would be starting him with confidence. The other one I think people might be scared off of, I think after, some hype would be David Montgomery. We sort of didn't know last week if he was going to play. It was kind of back and forth. Sounded like he might be out. He ended up playing. But I do think that David Montgomery this week is kind of a borderline RB1 for me. Going against the Giants. This is, they are at home. So I think there's a lot to like here with him. And so I think players like him, and even we're going to have to monitor some situations in Philly with like a Miles Sanders, because if we see that Jordan Howard is again out this week, then maybe Miles Sanders makes some sense against Seattle. But I think these backs that were kind of hyped last week, people are going to kind of be afraid of playing this week because none of them really did anything between Miles Sanders, David Montgomery, guys like that. And I think David Montgomery this week is kind of one of my favorite bounce back spots here for a running back. So I really do like him against the Giants. And then, like I said, like a Miles Sanders or, again, Tevin Coleman. I think these are all players you can play with confidence. So anyways, a couple other ones that I did want to talk to you guys about. One would be Aaron Jones going against at San Francisco. It's tough, right? Because with him, it's like, between him and, because basically him and Jamal Williams have been getting opportunities. Like Jamal Williams is like a low end RB2 on the season or high end RB3. And they're both kind of get opportunities. And sometimes we see more of a hot hand approach where Aaron Jones all of a sudden kind of finds himself off the field. And when Aaron Jones is hot, he kind of is the one that gets rode. But, the Sunday night matchup at San Francisco, what are your guys' thoughts on Aaron Jones this week? Is he somebody that you're just starting with confidence, or, depending on what you may have, would you even consider sitting him against San Francisco, who's been pretty good against the run?
Yeah, I mean, depending on what you have, but at this point, probably don't have much better options that you're going to feel super confident about. I think you have to lower expectation. I mean, he seems to be the clear number 2 target option in that offense. So maybe that's a way they can utilize him to beat that front seven. I know D Ford, their one of San Fran's defensive ends, was injured the last game. I'm not sure on his status for this week, but he is a little surprising to see. Where is he? All the way up at 7 in Fantasy Pros consensus ranking. So I'm a little surprised to see him that high. But again, you probably don't have too great options. And with Jones, we've seen it before. He can have the week that he had 3 touchdowns or whatever it was, he only had 15 touches or something crazy like that. So we've seen him be efficient and get into the end zone on limited touches before. But I think he is someone that you do need to temper expectations with.
Yeah, this backfield is much closer to a 50-50 split than people realize, because Jones has been scoring fantasy points so often. Yeah. I think regression is going to be cruel to Aaron Jones the rest of this year. But like you said, he's so involved in the passing game that maybe it doesn't happen. I just think that the touchdown regression is gonna happen and because he scored just so many early on.
How do you guys feel about Chris Carson going up? They will be at Philly this week.
So he is on bye. No, sorry, that's wrong. I'm thinking of Dalvin Cook. That's a fine matchup for him. He's going to see so much usage that I don't see why he would not produce. It's really just about the fact that he's almost on the field 90% of the time, that he's going to be fine through usage, and he's getting involved relatively quite frequently in the passing game. So I think he's a fine play, even against a strong Philly run defense.
That would be my concern with him. I have him as like a borderline RB2. I still think you have to play him because of the opportunities that he gets. With the fact that he gets so many opportunities kind of makes it to where you want to play him. But, as we know, Philly's much more of a pass funnel. And so this is a tough matchup like for him. And I don't feel great about it. Again, it's not one you're starting with any sort of confidence. If you were lucky enough to have some running back depth, you may even consider sitting him. I mean, just because this is not a great matchup, and I could see where he kind of gets game scripted a little bit out, and they are coming off a bye. We'll have to see what happens with Tyler Lockett, so that could change some things. But if Tyler Lockett's back with Josh Gordon having an extra week in there to kind of get prepared and get acclimated into this offense, and DK Metcalf, I could see them really leaning on the pass and not really utilizing Chris Carson all that much. So I don't feel great at all about Chris Carson. Like I said, I still think you're probably playing him just because I can't imagine you have too many options that are going to be above him. But like I said, I have him as a borderline RB2 this week. So I would not feel fantastic about playing. So is there any other running backs you guys want to discuss?
I don't think so, man. I think we hit on the big ones for the week. I think we can move it to receiver.
Yeah, I feel like with all the ones we've kind of talked about, I guess, just a rundown, kind of with the quarterbacks, but some other ones to monitor would be Sony Michel, like you guys mentioned. Dallas has been terrible against the run. Sony Michel hasn't been great this year. Really hasn't been good at all, to be honest with you, for most weeks. But this could be a Sony Michel type game. If they are not able to utilize the pass and they're more lean on their defense to kind of keep this more low scoring, then Sony Michel could be a play. But right now I have him as an RB3. I think other than that, I think we kind of talked about him. I think guys like Duke Johnson, J.D. McKissick are kind of borderline plays. It's flex options. Somebody like a Naheem Hines, again, we just sort of discussed, if you're able to pick him up off waivers, I think I would look to utilize him in the flex because I think that he has some upside. Other than that, I think that's kind of it. We kind of hit on all these other ones. So let's jump over to the old wide receiver position where I think there is some pretty solid plays this week. You have the wonderful Michael Thomas, who is going to see – let me ask you guys this about Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas has kind of been matchup proof. Dude's been a monster this year. But as long as James Bradbury is out there, James Bradbury has done a really good job against wide receivers this year and has shut down and really limited notable wide receivers and this year, and has played a lot of them and has done a pretty good job against them. I know he did well against DeAndre Hopkins and some of the other ones they faced. But what are your guys' thoughts? I mean, I know we're not sitting Michael Thomas here. That's ludicrous. But again, is he somebody else that people should just be locking in and feeling 100% confidence that he's going to go out and smash?
Yeah, I think you have to, just because if that's a matchup that is getting to him, we've seen him just jump into the slot and be able to shred whoever's covering him in the slot as well. So far in the year, he has played 135 of his 622 snaps from the slot, which is almost 22%. So again, if that's something that is seeming to slow him down for whatever reason, they'll just throw him in the slot and he'll be fine. And plus, he's between him and Jared Cook and Kamara. We always talk about wanting to find offenses where the targets are concentrated, and doesn't get much more concentrated than Michael Thomas getting 12 to 15 targets every single week. So, I mean, maybe not a total smash spot, but I mean, I think you're still hoping to get 18 points out of him as a kind of as the floor.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Michael Thomas is so good. He's beat great corners throughout the year. I mean, he played Casey Hayward. He had a great game. He's played. He's dominating. Jalen Ramsey again. So he's someone who is just matchup proof. Like Cody said, he's going to move around the field. You got Drew Brees throwing him the ball. It's so concentrated. They have to involve him because there's really not another option. So he's matchup proof to me.
What about Amari Cooper? I mean, he's banged up, but he's been playing through it. We've already talked about the matchup, but he has New England. I mean, would you contemplate sitting him at all? Just like I said, between the matchup and how his health has been over the past couple of weeks, it seems like he was able to play through it a lot stronger just a few weeks ago and kind of had the dud last week. Is that somebody, given these circumstances, that you might debate sitting? If obviously if you had the available options to do so.
Yeah, I'd consider it. I mean, if he's going to continue to be banged up like this, and he'll probably get Stephon Gilmore next week, so he could be shut down. Darius Slay just did it. I don't know how much of it was Slay playing Pro Bowl caliber football again, or if it's just the injury. But we've talked about this before. New England likes to take away the best weapon on the other team. I don't know that they think that it would be Amari Cooper, though. I mean, is it going to be Zeke? Is it going to be Cooper? Thoughts?
I mean, this could be one of those scenarios where they put Gilmore on Gallup. I mean, put their number 2 corner with safety help over top with Amari. So that'd be something interesting worth monitoring to see how they play that. Kev, what would you be doing with Cooper this week?
Well, one, I think if they did that, if they put Gilmore on Amari Cooper, then I don't think they would double him at all. I think they would double Michael Gallup,
right,
or vice versa, or however it works. But so, I mean, I don't love Amari Cooper this week. It's just, I do think that he's going to end up seeing a lot of Stephon Gilmore, and we know Stephon Gilmore has been arguably the best corner in the league this year. So I actually have Michael Gallup ranked higher this week than Amari Cooper. I have Gallup at 13, and I have Amari Cooper at 19. So I still think you're starting him. I still think that he probably makes for like a low-end wide receiver 2. But again, I mean, I temper a little bit of expectation. Like, you would have to have some players that it would be hard for me to imagine really sitting him. Even though this is a tough matchup, but he is a player that can kind of house call one at any time. He's an elite route runner, and I think they will try to move him around the field to get him the ball in his hands. So, yeah, I mean, I again, not one that I feel fantastic about. So, some of the other ones that I think, at least inside the top 12 this week, that are maybe a little bit not surprising, but you sort of look at like an Odell Beckham, who we've kind of already talked about, but someone like an Allen Robinson, who has really commanded a really high number of targets in this offense, but he's tethered to arguably the worst quarterback in the league this year with Mitchell Trubisky. We don't really know what they're going to do with him. They said after the game that he had a hip pointer or something like that, which is weird because, it looked like it was a surprise to Mitch Trubisky on the sideline once they pulled him. Like, it didn't seem like this was something, and they even asked the players afterwards about it, and if they knew anything about his injury, and none of them knew anything about it. So I think that's just what they said to kind of save face. But I think that they actually pulled Mitchell Trubisky to see what they could do, and which is weird because, Mitchell Trubisky certainly wasn't good. I didn't think he was just horrific last week. I don't know, but anyways, someone like Allen Robinson this week, I have him as a top 10 wide receiver. I'm at 10. Going against the Giants, there is some concern that, depending on what happens here at quarterback position, but that, this could always go awry. And, we've seen games where they've sort of targeted Taylor Gabriel or, he's found the end zone multiple times. But I think this team feels like a kind of an Allen Robinson bounce back week after he's kind of struggled the last couple.
Yeah, actually I had him written down as one of my starts of the week for everything you were just hitting on, Kevin. If it is Chase Daniels, that's not a huge drop off from Trubisky. So I think this is a scenario where we can go back to Allen Robinson and plug him back into our starting lineups. I mean, you haven't been expecting the world out of him. He's been more of a floor play than he has been a ceiling play. But this is definitely a spot where I'm going to go back to him. Someone else I had written down, Jamison Crowder. He's just been super consistent over the past couple of weeks, and he obviously there's another matchup kind of play. He gets Oakland. This is something where they're going to be able to move the ball on each other, so it shouldn't get out of hand at all. And actually, this is something that surprised me. Over the last 3 weeks, he's actually tied with Tyreek Hill for wide receiver 1 over that span and half PPR points. He's had at least 5 catches for 75 yards and a touchdown in all 3 of those. So any of you guys have love for Jamison Crowder this week? Is that a play where you're looking, or who else are you looking at this week?
Yeah, I like Crowder this week. The Jets went for more than 400 yards last week, which is their best outing of the year, and Crowder seems to be the first look for Darnold. Between him and Ryan Griffin, those seem to be the top 2 targets for the Jets right now, with Lev Bell mixed in there quite a bit as well. So yeah, I agree. Crowder's been a very solid play lately.
No, I think so. And, as we already kind of talked about earlier, that I think between him and who was I thinking of? Also train of thought, Robbie Anderson, that I think is also a viable play this week and somebody that I would look to add and start in a few leagues. So, yeah. So Nate, tell us about your, some people might call it a homer pick anytime you pick, a player from your favorite team. But I do think he's in a great spot this week for Marvin Jones. But tell the folks about what you're expecting from him this week.
Yeah, so it seems to me, watching them more than I care to admit, that Marvin Jones seems to have the better connection with Jeff Driscoll so far. Jones has actually caught 9 of 10 targets compared to 5 of 14 targets for Kenny Galladay. Their average depth of targets have been pretty comparable, 12.2 to 13.6. So, Kenny's getting more targets. He's getting slightly deeper targets. I feel like this is a bounce back game for him, but there have just been so many missed throws by Jeff Driscoll in Kenny Galladay's way. Really, the only connection they've had is when he just sort of chucks it as far as he can and hopes Kenny comes down with it. And the couple times that he did were pretty much the only big plays and only fantasy point scoring plays that Kenny Galladay's had. So the safer play to me is Marvin Jones because he seems to have a better connection with Driscoll in terms of catch rate. Personally, I don't think the Redskins can cover either player, so that means they are probably both good plays this week. But I'm going to give the slight edge to Marvin Jones because of that catch rate.
Yeah, I mean, Marvin Jones always tends to be the one that flies under the radar for most people, especially because of, the presence of Kenny Galladay and some of the, highlight reel catches that Kenny Galladay's had. But, as we saw Marvin Jones, his upside where he had the 3 touchdown game earlier in the year. So I do think Marvin Jones has been a pretty pleasant surprise for a lot of people that kind of wrote him off and left him for dead after last season's pretty poor performance. So really nice bounce back from him this year. And this is a really fantastic spot. I think that you can kind of view him this week as kind of a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 in this matchup against the Redskins. So for me, I think my guy, I really like Terry McLaurin. I think the guy is super talented, but it's so risky playing him now with Dwayne Haskins. They hooked up last week, was actually a fantastic throw by Dwayne Haskins. One of the rare times we've seen it from him so far this year. But I think that, I think he's at least in consideration for a flex play against Detroit. I think Detroit can definitely be thrown upon. So I do think Terry McLaurin is at least in play. And I think that hopefully, with another week with Dwayne Haskins can progress a little bit more. And so I do like him. But my main one, a couple are Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel has been solid the last 2 weeks and has really put up some really solid numbers. Again, if this game turns out to be a little bit more high scoring going against Aaron Rodgers, I think Deebo Samuel is a solid play. Again, another option. I think if you have him, he's a very solid flex play this week. Wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, and then DK Metcalf. The guy has been, I think, better than what some people gave him credit for. A lot of people looked at him as just like a go route, and that's it. And I think he's proven to be a little bit more than that. And then being paired with Russ, the most efficient quarterback in the league, I think that really helped. We'll obviously have to monitor what's going on with Tyler Lockett. They are coming off the bye, which helps, who was hospitalized after their game against the 49ers. But it did say that they said that he is looking a lot better, and they are expecting him to play this weekend. So even with that, I still think DK Metcalf is in a pretty solid spot. We'll have to see how much more involved Josh Gordon is, because Josh Gordon really wasn't involved all that much last game. But then kind of once Tyler Lockett went out, Josh Gordon got more opportunities. But I do think, at least for this week and this matchup, and I think a game that can end up being kind of another one of these high-scoring affairs, because Seattle has really struggled to stop the pass this year. And so I feel like that this could be another game that's kind of back and forth here going against the Eagles. So I do like DK Metcalf as another, solid flex option, wide receiver 3 type.
Yeah, I like that call, Kev. I was gonna ask you if the presence of Josh Gordon would pull you off of DK Metcalf at all, but you being the pro that you are, you went right into it before I could ask it. Is Will Fuller somebody you guys would play if indeed he is cleared? Obviously they have the quick turnaround on the Thursday night game. But is he somebody that you would throw in as, if you kind of needed a Hail Mary play where, like I said, if he is active, his floor is literally 0. Is he somebody that you would even think about playing coming back from injury if he is cleared?
I'm not ready to plug him into my lineup right away. A lot of players this year have kind of struggled in their first game back from injury. So I think it'd be a little hasty to rush it out and just expect him to be exactly what he was. He really only had the one huge game. Otherwise, he was pretty below average or lackluster most of the time. So I
goodbye. Hey man, at least it wasn't me this time.
They deleted him. I wonder if he just hit the button on accident.
Sorry about that.
Wasted away again in Margaritaville.
My touchy mouse just decided to go back.
So I'm done with this question. Rookie questions. I'm out of here. What amateur hour? I'm here at amateur hour. I don't got time for this. All right. So on that note, I guess let's try to, I think that's all we have left. Really, our tight ends to talk about. So let's answer a couple of these questions we got in here real quick. He had a trade, Devin Singletary for Tevin Coleman and Cortland Sutton.
Do you think John Brown is supposed to be part of that, or do you think John is a typo? It says John and Devin Singletary. Or do you think John just shouldn't even be part of that at all?
Maybe that is John Brown. I don't know.
Just
so let's assume
John and Devin, just a guy.
Let's assume that it is John Brown, because if it was just Singletary for Coleman Sutton, give me Coleman Sutton easily. I mean, for Devin Singletary, but let's assume that it is John Brown and Devin Singletary for Tevco and Sutton. Where what side would you guys land on?
Still with Tevin Coleman and Cortland Sutton side. One, having two assets from the Bills would not make me feel good inside.
Yes,
because I mean, the Bills are not some like elite offense. I'm not trying to offend. I know, but Bills Mafia can come at you very, very, very with a lot of aggression if you talk about their team. But like their offense is still like it's okay. It's not anything great. So having both of them would not be something I'd feel great about. So getting Tevin Coleman and Cortland Sutton, who Cortland Sutton has kind of stepped up and kind of been the alpha in that offense, and then you get Tevin Coleman, who since back, I mean, has been solid in his own right. Outside of last week, wasn't fantastic. Didn't kill you, but wasn't really great either. Kind of got bailed out on the last drive with some dump off passes. But so, yeah, Tevin Coleman, Cortland Sutton, I mean, you know, if that's John Brown, I don't care. You know, like if it's John Brown, Devin Singletary, like, yes, you as long as you got the Tevin Coleman, Cortland Sutton side, you did well.
Listen to the Bills' upcoming schedule. Broncos, Cowboys, Ravens, Steelers, Patriots, and then the Jets in Week 17 if you're, God forbid, playing in the fantasy playoffs in Week 17. So, I mean, are either of these players usable the rest of the year? I'm not sure that they are. John Brown, I guess, but Devin Singletary, certainly not.
Yeah, then on the other side of that, Sutton gets, after Buffalo this week, he gets Chargers, Houston, Kansas City, and Detroit in Week 16. So, I mean, I think I like in a vacuum, I think I like John Brown and Devin Singletary just separately better than both pieces with Tevin Coleman and Cortland Sutton. But together, I wouldn't want to get two players from Buffalo and be trading away Coleman and Sutton. So give me the Coleman and Sutton side.
Yeah, I mean, I just can't imagine. Yeah, I would much rather have the Cortland Sutton and the other side of it. Like I said, John Brown has been solid. What is he? Is it 9 weeks? He's only him and Michael Thomas have had 50 yards receiving in every game. Is that what it is? I can't remember the exact stat. I saw it earlier. He and Michael Thomas are one of the same, which is a good era to be in. So, and then. So we have one. Is Barkley going to play? As far as I know, he's supposed to play. I haven't heard anything. I know he said that people at the media asked him about being shut down. He said he wants no part of being shut down. They've said they don't want any part of shutting him down. Coming off a bye, I can't imagine he would not play. So I definitely think he's playing this week. I'd be surprised if he didn't.
Yeah, you don't want no part of this, do we?
Yeah. Other than that, you know. I mean, we could go through here and talk about wide receiver all day. There's so many of them to discuss, but I think we kind of hit on all the key situations anyways right now that people would be needing to make. So let's go ahead and jump over to tight end, which can be a very, very slippery slope because it is kind of a nasty position. Now looking at the top 12, you're just like, oh, my God. Anyways, so for this week, you know, obviously Travis Kelce, you're not going to have him. He's on bye. So George Kittle, I do think there's a relatively good chance that he returns this week against Green Bay, which makes him obviously the top play. But if he's back, you're playing him anyways. We don't have to have that conversation. Zach Ertz, kind of the same situation. I think this is a pretty solid matchup against Seattle. Again, you can pass on them. They've allowed players like Andy Dalton, which isn't surprising. Andy Dalton is Andy Dalton. Threw for over 400 yards against them. We've seen other quarterbacks be able to go out and kind of light them up.
Right, generational talent.
Yeah. Hey. I mean, I'm just out here bringing the news to people. You know, people can take it however they want. So,
them's is facts.
Yeah, preach, brother. So past that, you know, I think we can. You know, Darren Waller. He hasn't been as good as what he was earlier in the year, but against the Jets, I still think you start him. Mark Andrews, but I think where we start to get into the conversation here is where we get to the guys like Gerald Everett, Dallas Goedert, Ryan Griffin. Praise that man. Won me some money last week. 2,900 on DraftKings. Ended up scoring like 29 fantasy points. So it was fantastic. And Jacob Hollister, the revelation. And then you have guys like Noah Fant, since Emmanuel Sanders' trade, has been the biggest beneficiary of that because he has seen at least 25, I think either 22 or 25% of the targets each of the last 3 weeks, heavily targeted in this offense. Now, again, not a great offense against, or not a great matchup against Buffalo, But what I do think that you could see from him this week, he is explosive. And the thing with him is, so for Noah Fant, he is somebody that I kind of like this week as well, because I feel like that I think you're going to see Tre'Davious White, who I don't think has allowed a touchdown all season, plastered to Cortland Sutton. And so I think this kind of opens things up. I mean, really, who else do they have? We were kind of hoping that Deshaun Hamilton would actually do something, but has not been a thing. Tim Patrick came back off IR last week. He had a pretty solid game last week. I think he had 8 targets for Denver. But he did leave for a little bit, but came back. So, but I do think Noah Fant, I think, is the biggest beneficiary. And I think in this game, in terms of targets, and I think even in red zone opportunities, I think that makes Noah Fant a pretty solid tight end. Now, it doesn't take much to be a great tight end, right? In this day and age, if you get 3 or 4 receptions for 40 yards, you're probably pretty happy about getting 7 or 8 fantasy points from your tight end. But anything more than that. So, but I do think Noah Fant is somebody who can give you double-digit fantasy points this week. I think that's in the range of his possibilities. So if Noah Fant was available, I would definitely be adding him. As you talked about his fantasy playoff schedule, as we get closer to that, and after this week, kind of things really open up for them. So Noah Fant is somebody that I think that should be rostered everywhere, and I think he's even somebody you could play this week if you had to.
Yeah, Fant is actually available. He's only owned in 28% of Yahoo leagues, so he's definitely someone that you can just pick up off the waiver and stream for this week. He's actually less owned than Vance McDonald, who is owned. Vance is owned in 53% of leagues. I mean, he might be somebody that you can look to this week. I guess if you're in a pinch, like he would, just the available targets and the matchup is much better. But like that, I mean, that doesn't really make sense to me. We already touched on mine, who is Ryan Griffin. Someone else I think you can look at would be Dallas Goedert this week with that matchup against Seattle. I think he has a touchdown in 3 of his last 4 weeks. So, I mean, that's, again, like Kev was saying, if you get 3 catches for 30 yards, 3 for 40, you're more than happy with that. And if one of those happens to be a touchdown, I mean, you're doing cartwheels. So, any other plays that you're looking at for week 12?
So just to touch on your Dallas Goedert, with Alshon Jeffrey out, he saw a season high in snaps. He was out there 81% of the time. So it seems like in response to not having Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey, they like to run the 2 tight end set a lot. And so I think he's a great play against the Seattle defense, who is giving up a lot of yards through the air.
Timely question we got there, Kev.
I know. I was like, hey, all the players we just all talked about, and in a question form. So there may not be a winner here because we may end it all going our own direction. But Julian Rivera asked Griffin, Fant, or Goddard PPR.
That is the order that I would have it in. So I would have Griffin first. Kev, are you gonna roll? Are you gonna roll Fant?
Are you going Goddard, Nate?
I don't think I'd want Goddard necessarily here. I think Fant would be number 1, and then it's a coin flip between Griffin and Goddard.
So the reason why you all need to tune in to the YouTube live show is because Kev just did some fucking ungodly shimmy that I'm.
Now, what was that? I mean,
just straight up looking like a fish out of water or like a dolphin that's breaching the water. Well, I don't know. Kev, I'm not sure what that was.
I'm dying.
Yeah, and he did it in a rocking chair, so it just added to the shaking and shimmying. I mean, look at this. Woo!
I was excited that.
Fantastic.
I'm gonna kill Noah Fant here as well.
You guys remember that old SNL skit where Antonio Banderas had his own show, and they he's like, I gotta take off my shirt. And they're like, no, it's too sexy. That's what I think we have to tell Kev if he's ever going to do that shimmy again. It's it's.
Yeah, we're gonna need a warning next time, Kev.
Yeah, that's
at least a hand signal, something.
right. I couldn't even complete my thought about whether Goddard or Griffin with all that motion going on. I mean,
the giant, hey, I got moves.
Yeah.
I might be a white guy, but I bust out the electric slide here in a second.
Ooh, man.
Oh God, that was fantastic. Yeah. So, I think it's Fant. I think Fant wins. That's what that was actually. I was like, oh, we're gonna get a win here. We're both going Fant. So 2-1, Fant. But Griffin's also a solid play. I like Griffin too, but against the Raiders as well. So he's in a fan. So to be honest, like he's in a much better matchup. And it could be a much higher scoring game as well. So if you wanted to go Griffin, like I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't be mad at you. And I would totally understand why. I think Fant is a little bit safer than Griffin is, but I do think that I think you can make a case that Griffin's ceiling is a little bit higher. So, oh gosh, that was great. Yeah, I think other than that, if you needed like a dart throw, like a Mike Gesicki, I think he's always in play. TJ Hawkinson, I think he has another big game coming sometime soon. Eric Ebron feels like he could be that's somebody you could go with. OJ Howard against Atlanta.
No.
Yeah.
Is he still in the doghouse?
I don't know.
Forever.
Did you see that? That was bullshit too. By the way, that should have been like a fumble or something. Like that's bullshit that counted against Jameis Winston as intercepted. Whatever that was, what's going behind him? Just let it go, bro. Just let it go. It can never end well for you if you're trying to hold the ball behind your back with defenders coming at you. Okay, one thing if you're like walking into the end zone or something. All right, cool. But like you're in the middle of the field, like this is only going to end poorly for you.
I mean, I think with the behind the back, he was trying to do a magic trick. And he's like, "Watch this as my playing time disappears." Looks like we got one more tight end question in the chat from Zach. Who are your top 5 tight ends for the rest of the year? I wanted to ask this question so that way I didn't have to go first.
Travis Kelce, George Kittle,
Andrews,
Mark Andrews, and
Ertz or Hunter Henry.
I think I already said him. Kittle, Kelce, Hunter Henry, Andrew, and Ertz. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. I think that's the way I would go. Yeah. Ertz is a little bit lower, mainly because, I think you could kind of swap Andrews and Ertz because Andrews is also in an offense where his quarterback throws to the tight end position. Like, what is it? Like, I think it's like 46% of the time or something insane like that. But they use the other ones between Nick Boyle and, Hayden Hurst and, Mark Andrews. But yeah, I do think that Mark Andrews, I think you could kind of between him and, Ertz, though Ertz, did bounce back a little bit this past week. So I think, there's something to be said there. So I probably would put Ertz just ahead of Andrews. So again, it would probably be for me, it would be Kelce, Kittle, Hunter Henry, Ertz, and then Mark Andrews.
I think that has to be the top 5. Is there a name outside the top 5 that might be like a surprise, like number 4 or 5 that might sneak in there? Like, what about like a Jared Cook, Greg Olsen? Any names like that? What about any love for Evan Engram? Kind of forgot about him.
That's right.
Yeah, and I guess there is discussion this week that he could be back. So it sounds like he's trending more towards a healthy. And to be honest with you, it's going to be interesting to see what the Giants look like because Sterling Shepard also practiced in full today. So this might be the first time we've seen it all year where they really have their full complements of among their offense, and that really kind of hurts the Darius Slayton, because a lot of people went out and added Darius Slayton, and that all looks like it's going to come crashing to an end because once you add Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram and Golden Tate and Saquon Barkley, like Slayton becomes like the fifth option in the offense, which sucks because I really like Darius Slayton long term. I think he's going to be their solid, kind of their deep threat moving forward. So I don't think Golden Tate, I don't know, but the problem right now is it's such a muddled situation right now, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. So yeah, but I do think he deserves to be in that conversation, because when he's healthy, I think he's just as dynamic as the other five of those are. So if you wanted to swap out Evan Ingram with Mark Andrews, I think you could do that. The other one that I guess we didn't talk about, though, would be Austin Hooper, because we don't know. Like, they said that he's not practicing tomorrow, but they're not ruling him out to returning to practice Thursday and Friday. I don't know if this is a cat and mouse game that Dan Quinn's playing with us, because we kind of got initial word he's got 4 weeks, and then all of a sudden it's like last week it was he might be able to play this week. And of course, we all kind of knew he wasn't. He never practiced, and they finally ruled him out on Friday. But if Austin Hooper is back, let's say next week, we're still talking about rest of season. Where do you put Austin Hooper in that conversation? There has been no more reliable tight end than Austin. If Austin Hooper was healthy right now, where would he fit into that with you guys? Because I think you'd have to put him at 1, in my opinion, or 2 at the lowest.
I'd put him behind Kittle at 3.
Whew. If he were healthy, I'm with Kevin on this one. He's 1 or 2. I mean, I would bump Ertz out of that top 5 if Hooper were healthy.
Yeah. So it's a shame. Such a and it'll be interesting to see what the Falcons do with him over this offseason, because they think he is a free agent, and they're not a team that is filled with a ton of money heading into next season. So I do think that he's an option for a franchise tag, though, because he's not somebody that I would want to see them move on from, because I think he's been fantastic in that offense. So I guess we'll hit these up real quick. If Kittle recovers, should I trade away Kittle, Kupp for Andrews and Kamara?
Yeah,
I would do that.
For sure.
Yeah, I would too. I think we're all in agreement there. I think that is a solid trade, and I would definitely do that especially acquiring Alvin Kamara.
Exactly.
Alex, drop AJ Green for Chris Conley. If AJ comes back, he may be a league winner, but need a wide receiver this week bad. One, you can't worry about what's going to happen the next couple of weeks. Sorry, you can't. We have to worry about this week, especially if you need it really bad. He says, I have Kupp, Ridley, and Debo. I mean, I think you're okay with wide receivers, though. I mean, those are pretty solid options you have. But honestly, I don't think AJ Green's coming back.
And even if he does, are you that excited about AJ Green, this offense?
I mean, with Ryan Finley. If it was Adam Dalton or Andy Dalton, we'd be having a conversation. But we're talking about Finley. And so, yeah, I don't think you can get excited about that whatsoever. I love how I always get back to that. But, yeah, no, I think you can drop him, especially if you're just absolutely needing a win. But you're not really doing terrible at wide receiver right now with Kupp, Ridley, and Debo. But those aren't, and I guess I would ask, is there anybody else besides Chris Conley?
No, there's not. It's Chris Conley or die.
Right. Yeah, I'd rather play Kupp, Ridley, and Debo over Chris Conley. No way am I playing him over anyone else.
Chris Conley has been my late round dart throw all year, so I will never tell you to not pick up Chris Conley.
Chris Conley is fantastic. Former Chief, former Georgia Bulldog, but
I think he was he was a distant second last week behind Chark, but he was second in targets. I think Chark had 15 and Conley had 8, I believe, last week. So, and you have that Foles Conley narrative. It's a match made in heaven.
Yeah. I mean, he is somebody that does have a pretty decent – I mean, he's somebody that's shown a pretty high ceiling, but his floor is also 0. So anytime you're thinking about playing Chris Conley, you have to factor that into the equation.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Okay.
So, that's everybody. That is people that are watching. Like, what are they doing? Don't even understand it. Okay, so I think that's about it, right? I think we kind of hit on everybody we wanted to talk about. Do you guys have any closing arguments that you guys want to put out there into the world?
No, the only thing I would say is, Kev, we were talking a little bit before about some of the reviews that you guys are getting over at the DGen Nation pod. Made me curious, so I went to see if what's been going on with the TFA podcast, and I don't think we've had a review in like 2 years on this podcast. So, any feedback you guys have, obviously we prefer the full 5-star compliment, but anything that you guys have to make us get better, we would definitely appreciate that. So head over to iTunes and drop us a rate and review. Be really appreciative.
Yeah, we're terrible at marketing because also, like anybody watching on YouTube, we really appreciate thumbs up because it all helps the old algorithm with where we rank and everything else. So we really appreciate everybody watching and checking this out. And we are here every single week, twice a week actually, and every time it's live. And so if you have questions like we did tonight, you can drop them in the chats, and we will get you answered because we are a podcast for the people, if you will.
I will.
Yes. Nate, do you have anything else? Any take? Let's do this. Let's end the show on a positive note. Give me your scorching hot bold take for this fantasy football week 12.
Oh, wow. My scorching hot bold take is that
scorching hot ball.
Yes, yeah. It's that, Nate Henry's football intake is going to be next to zero as he slowly drifts down the Caribbean and forgets all the world behind him. That's going to be hard to beat, I think, right there.
I have no idea what you just said.
Why, did I cut out?
No, we heard everything.
Yeah.
All right. Think of one real quick.
I don't have any.
Think of a bold take. I want to answer this one question because we just said we're going to answer everything. So think of your bold question. We're going to answer right after this, and then we're going to do what we got to do. Okay.
I got one. So you can think, Nate. Tyler Lockett finishes as the wide receiver 1 on the week.
Oh, that is somewhat strong. Okay. Would you guys trade CMC for Aaron Jones and Godwin, or Devontae Adams, or Fournette / Evans? Which trade do you like? Okay, so you could trade CMC for Aaron Jones and Godwin, or Devontae Adams, or Fournette and Evans. I think this is a wide conversation. I'm gonna be honest. Like, whoever that other team is absolutely fucking stacked. If they have Aaron Jones, Godwin, Devontae Adams, Fournette, and Mike Evans, that team did well with the draft.
Yeah, and don't trade Christian McCaffrey ever. So end of discussion.
No, whoa. You can trade. We've talked about this. You can trade Christian McCaffrey. Okay, but it's situation like if you're a borderline playoff team right now and you're desperate to get in, like you can trade Christian McCaffrey and redraft. Like it's definitely on the table. And like I wouldn't want, like I said, like I wouldn't want Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams, right? Yeah, I don't want two members of the same team like that. So I wouldn't want that.
So would you rather? Would you consider Aaron Jones and Godwin, or would you consider Fournette and Evans? Do any of those move the needle for you for McCaffrey? Man. I think if I were going to do that one, I would go the safety of Fournette and Evans, just because Aaron Jones, we've been talking about that. That split is close to a 50-50 in terms of snaps. It's just been Aaron Jones has been super efficient on his touches, and he's been the one finding the end zone multiple times. Fournette, on the other hand, has not been finding the end zone, but he's been doing basically everything else you could ask. So I think that one would be the one that I would consider the most. But man, it'd be so hard to trade somebody like McCaffrey.
But it's all situational dependent to me. If you're a team that said like you're there and you need more pieces, but so I would say this: like if it was me and I was going to make the trade for Christian McCaffrey, if I was going to trade away Christian McCaffrey in a redraft sense, like I would probably want more than just Aaron Jones or Chris Godwin, which sounds crazy because we know they're both their ceilings, but both of them are both of them can be volatile and they're both their respective offenses. So if the person has Aaron Jones, Godwin, Devontae Adams, Fournette, and Mike Evans, the way I would try to do would be to get Aaron Jones, Godwin, and Fournette for Christian McCaffrey, and then try to throw in a kicker to sweeten the deal a little bit, while I think that would be the best trade for you to be able to do that and feel relatively confident with what you're doing. Because like someone like Fournette, we know his opportunity share is still there. He really hasn't found the end zone is really what's hurt him, kind of like DJ Moore. And I think that is somebody who's going to see positive regression. I think it even helps with getting Nick Foles back in the offense. So I do like Fournette.
And just to be clear, you don't mean a literal kicker, right?
Yes. No. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I can see how people. I don't play in leagues with kickers anymore, so that doesn't register me. But I see what you're saying. Like, yes. No. I mean, it's like an extra piece there. Maybe a wide receiver 3, RB3 that maybe you have on your bench that you're really not playing, or stuff like that to add into the pot to be able to get a little bit more. Because if someone really wants CMC, they're gonna have to come off a lot.
Yeah, Alex in the chat said he traded CMC for Fournette, Mack, and Godwin last week. So that'd be more along the lines of what we're talking about.
And you're not happy you did it.
Well, now that Mack's hurt, yeah.
Fournette got 8 carries. All right, here's my scorching hot take. Are you ready?
Yeah.
He's fixing the hair.
RB1 RB1.
Wow, that is hot.
Yeah, that's a tough one. There you go. Devontae Parker, wide receiver 1, top 12 this week.
He's going to be the wide receiver 1?
No, top 12. That's like trading for a kicker.
Yeah, that is true. Who does that? Or like trading for a defense? Poor form. Okay, for me, I've done it once this year, and now we're going to make it twice. I have Nick Chubb, 200 yards and 3 touchdowns this week against the Miami Dolphins. We've done it. I nailed it the last time.
You almost hit it to the T the last time.
With my Nick Chubb call. So I think this is another Nick Chubb week, and so I am starting all the Nick Chubb I can. Really quickly, I can answer this one. I don't think this is what's your thoughts on John Brown this week? We've already talked about John Brown. I do not think he's a great play. I think he's going against one of the worst pass defense, or one of the best pass defenses in the league. Do not start him just because of what he did last week. If you're absolutely desperate, you could start him. If you had to play Kareem Hunt, I think you could, but this isn't a great Kareem Hunt week just because of I think with the Dolphins, unless the Dolphins really push them, Kareem Hunt seems to be much more of the pass catching back right now, while Nick Chubb has everything locked up again on the run. So if you had to, and you're desperate, you're looking for ceiling, I would probably start Kareem. I would probably start John Brown in that situation because I think he's still somebody that could bust off a 60, 70-yard touchdown with his speed. But if you're looking a little bit more security, I would probably rather play Kareem Hunt because it's just not as a great matchup. 35-point total. Just everything's pointing in the direction of not wanting to play him. So with that being said, we appreciate everybody tuning in and checking this out. I did not expect to do a 2-hour podcast tonight, but here we are because we answered all these questions. But we really appreciate them. We want to keep them coming. Again, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out. And getting more stuff out there. We have a ton of off-season content. We're going to be doing more, regular videos on certain players. We're going to do some player profiles. We're going to be talking about dynasty, redraft, all of it.
Yeah.
Check us out on Thursday nights as well with the DFS podcast, the DFS DJ Nation pod that we do. You can join our Slack chat. We do an excellent job there with you can join it's absolutely free to join the Slack. We have a redraft room. We have a DFS dynasty best ball whenever that's going on. So we have a lot going on. And so again, follow us on Twitter at FF_authority, or you can follow us. You can follow Nate at Nate Henry FF, Mr. Original. You can follow at #HedgeLife, Cody Kutzer at CKutzerFF. Follow me at FantasyWrath13. And until next week, have a great night, and we will see you next week. And let's get that W almost to the championship.
Dubs.
Dub City. Get a little shake.